It is no surprise that when it comes to dealing with narcissists, countless sources recommend the strategy of going no contact. This tactic, entailing complete disconnection from the narcissist, effectively denies them the validation they crave, leaving them stranded in their own echo chamber. However, as effective as this approach may be, there exists an alternative, a subtle yet deeply powerful method that strikes at the core of a narcissist's identity. It is more impactful than merely cutting ties, and when executed correctly, leaves the narcissist rattled to their very essence. This powerful approach is none other than the art of indifference. To understand why indifference shakes narcissists more profoundly than cutting contact, one must first comprehend the inner workings of a narcissist's mind. Narcissists operate on a fundamental need for admiration, validation, and control. They exist in a self-constructed reality where they are the center of attention. Anything less feels like a threat to their inflated sense of self. When you ignore a narcissist, it chips away at their carefully constructed facade, stripping away the power they so desperately seek to hold over others. In this state of indifference, you're not just denying them attention. You're refusing to play a role in the narrative they've written for themselves, a story in which you are merely a pawn. Consider the nature of indifference in comparison to no contact. Going no contact signifies a boundary, one the narcissist might recognize as a challenge. Many narcissists enjoy testing these boundaries, viewing them as obstacles they can manipulate, destroy, or twist. This approach may lead to obsessive attempts by the narcissist to re-establish contact, feeding their ego by convincing themselves that your resistance only highlights their importance in your life. Indifference, on the other hand, is a dismissal. It's not a barricade, but rather an open door that signifies nothing. The narcissist finds no challenge in indifference, no hook to bait their ego or manipulative tactics. When you react with indifference, they lose the fuel that sustains them, your emotional reaction. It's important to note that indifference doesn't mean pretending to be aloof. It's a genuine lack of interest in the narcissist's attempts to draw attention, provoke an emotional response, or reignite old arguments. The sting of indifference lies in its subtlety. It doesn't announce itself with a final goodbye or a stern boundary. Rather, it slips into the cracks of every interaction or non-interaction, leaving the narcissist wondering if they were ever significant in the first place. For the narcissist, this is terrifying. Their identity is tied to the reactions of others, the image they cultivate in the minds of those they manipulate. Without these reactions, they are forced to confront an empty reflection. They must look inward, which for them is an unthinkable scenario. From an academic perspective, indifference as a psychological tactic affects the narcissist on both an emotional and cognitive level. It forces a reality upon them where they cease to exist as the center of another's world. Unlike anger or even avoidance, indifference provides no fuel for argument or validation. This lack of response often leaves the narcissist with two options: to move on in search of new sources of validation, or to fall into a cycle of self-doubt. The first option, finding new sources of validation, is usually the path taken by narcissists, but they rarely forget an experience where indifference was used against them. It leaves an indelible mark, a memory of powerlessness. Emotionally, indifference is an insult to the narcissist's core belief that they are superior, special, or exceptional. When their attempts to elicit a response fail, it undercuts this belief in a subtle, ongoing manner. They might not even realize they are being affected, but the sense of emptiness gnaws at their pride. It casts a shadow of inadequacy over the very foundation of their self-worth. A narcissist, often consumed with an inflated ego, is left feeling irrelevant and dismissed, a situation that forces them to grapple with an unpleasant truth: they hold no sway over you. Of course, the challenge for those dealing with narcissists is to master this indifference without letting it slip into apathy toward others or losing one's own empathy. Indifference in this context is not a loss of compassion, but a strategic removal of emotional investment in someone who seeks to drain, manipulate, and control. It's a stance of self-respect, a refusal to validate the narcissist's destructive behavior. Ironically, Indifference requires a level of emotional maturity and restraint that the narcissist fundamentally lacks, making it the ultimate unspoken victory. Ultimately, the true beauty of indifference lies in its quiet power. It doesn't need to announce itself or come with the finality of a cutoff. It exists as a living reminder of self-worth and self-protection, a silent declaration that one's peace is worth more than engaging with the narcissist's games. For the narcissist, it is the wound that doesn't heal, the absence that cannot be replaced. Indifference leaves them stranded in a void, unable to fulfill their insatiable need for validation. And that, for them, is the cruelest reality of all.